McMorris Rodgers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just start out by thanking you for your inspiring tribute to our dear friend and colleague, extraordinary colleague, Jackie Walorski. I wanted to associate myself with your comments, and I greatly appreciate you starting this meeting by celebrating her life and her legacy, her leadership in the House. We're all going to miss her, and my hope and prayer is that we will gain inspiration from Jackie to live every day as if it were our last. Today, we're at the Rules Committee, having the same conversation we had almost a year ago, testifying on a proposed massive tax and spending spree by the majority. And I'm very concerned about the destruction, the devastating harm that it would have on our economy, our energy security, our medical care. Since under the Democrats' one-party rule, we've seen inflation continue to spiral out of control. Energy and gas prices have continued to rise at record levels. Healthcare costs continue to climb. Families can't find baby formula, and we are now in a recession. Yet here we are again debating the same destructive policies under a new name, the Inflation Reduction Act. I thought Tom Cole summed it up well. It's grossly misleading, and there's no evidence that this legislation will fix the inflation crisis. Inflation is an ugly tax on every part of people's lives, from the gas pump to the grocery store. This legislation continues President Biden's war on reliable and affordable energy, American jobs, and the cost of living on hardworking Americans. It will increase the pain at the pump by reviving and doubling a tax on refiners and crude oil importers. The natural gas tax will raise costs across the board on everything that comes from natural gas, from heating our homes to fertilizer and food. And while families get zero relief from President Biden's energy crisis, this legislation will send billions to use Chinese supply chains to make solar panels, wind turbines, and electric car batteries for the rich. For example, consider the EPA. EPA's budget is tripled. There's $27 billion for a national climate bank, $3 billion in environmental justice and climate block grant programs, $5 billion for a pollution reduction grants program, $1 billion for electric garbage trucks and school buses. The Department of Energy, there's $9 billion for a rebate program for electric appliance heat pumps and energy efficient home retrofits, $1 billion to use building codes to ban fossil fuels, $2 billion for private entities to build transmission lines for more wind and solar, and $200 million to train insulation and electrification contractors. An energy company just told me last week while I've been home that without a strong energy mix that includes natural gas, their customers' electricity bills would double. And they said that we need choices to keep cost affordable and the lights on. We need to remember the Solyndra scandal when they defaulted on $500 million, a loan from DOE. This bill pumps $250 billion of loan authority into a similar type of loan guarantee program. And even worse, it uses $5 billion in taxpayer dollars to cover credit subsidy costs that companies take on these loans that in the past the companies would have to cover. It's Solyndra on steroids. And I just would ask, how are we going to make anything in America? How are we going to mine, manufacture, process, build in America without permitting reforms? This bill does nothing to include meaningful permitting reforms. And what we saw in the Senate was that the Democrats were united against necessary permitting and regulatory reforms. The president continues to block mines, and the president and the administration continue to shut down energy infrastructure projects. There's little trust that we are going to see the majority come to the table on these reforms. Regarding the healthcare provisions in this tax and spending spree, I'm very concerned that it will continue the Democrats' march towards socialized medicine. Instead of working on bipartisan, lower costs, more cures, legislation that's been introduced for several Congresses now, we've got several provisions signed into law through the years, but it would cap what seniors pay on their out-of-pocket for drugs without jeopardizing innovation. Unfortunately, this legislation resurrects Speaker Pelosi's government price controls. the legislation, the idea that failed in the Energy and Commerce Committee, this Congress. Their scheme will lead to fewer cures in America. It will make future drugs more expensive if they're able to launch at all. I'm very concerned that it's only going to embolden China's medical leadership, biomedical leadership, and the Chinese Communist Party's grip on the world's medical supply chains. According to CBO, price controls will lead to 15 fewer drugs and treatments coming to the market. And this is a modest estimate, with other studies suggesting we could see more than 100 fewer cures. Majority Democrats have previously stated that this is the price that they're willing to pay to give Secretary Becerra and a new $3 billion healthcare bureaucracy the power to determine if a new cure or drug is worth it. That price could be eliminating hope for patients with cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, diabetes, HIV/AIDS, and much more. CBO also confirmed that these price controls, which tie drugs covered by Medicare to Biden's inflation crisis, will lead to higher costs for future drugs when they launch. So despite the promises for lower cost, this will mean Americans will pay more at the pharmacy counter. Shockingly, there's no pricing floor for the so-called negotiation price, meaning that healthcare bureaucrats could force a drug company to accept a figure as low as $1 or face up to a 95% excise tax. That's not negotiation, that's extortion, and it's going to drive medical investments overseas into the hands of the CCP. It will ensure that American seniors no longer reap the benefits of cutting-edge medical innovation. And the Democrats aren't even using the supposed savings from these price controls on improving healthcare for seniors, but instead subsidizing Obamacare and other unrelated energy projects. If this legislation is passed, 10 years from now, seniors will end up with fewer cures and still no certainty that Medicare will be able to pay for their healthcare. I'll close with a picture of where this scheme leads. Blackouts, more unaffordable electricity bills, more tax hikes, jobs destroyed, no hope to cure diseases, long lines of sick begging the government for more expensive life-saving treatments, an army of IRS agents harassing hardworking Americans, and weak American defenses against adversaries like China and Russia. Republicans stand ready to lift the regulatory burden, flip the switch on for more American energy production, and lower healthcare costs. That's what the American people rightfully want and deserve for a better quality of life. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much.